The Emergency Services Efficiency Committee to order. First thing I'd like is if we could all stand and take a moment of silence remembering the 343 firefighters who lost their life in the World Trade Center. Thank you. We need to seat alternates. We need to seat an alternate for Ron.
Move to seat Trevor.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Ron is seated. Trevor's not the same last names. Is there anybody here present to speak? Not on the agenda.
Speaking of
anything on the topic?
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah, I believe most of us are.
Okay. If we could keep our comments down to about 3 minutes, that would be good because I'd like to. Go ahead, sir. If you go, I'd like to have your name and street, if you would.
Sam Wheeler, Penny Hill Road. First let me just say I like and respect to everybody on the committee. I think I know some of them for many, many years. My main concern is with a structural concern. I used to be on the school board. I was chairman of the school board for a while. We had negotiations with, say, the teacher union. The teacher union and the town had, and the board had very close, many of the same goals, many of the same values, but there were issues. Those negotiations were not public. Basically, if I was in this situation again, I'd be very worried about getting into a frank discussion if I knew that this could be on Twitter tomorrow or tonight. It seems to me that if you want a frank discussion of some of the genuine issues between the two departments about how the future should go, making it a negotiation rather than essentially a town board would be the way to go. I could say a lot of other things about the issues, but that's the main thing I want to say. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Sorry, am I going to cause a problem for you? Hi, how are you? Hi, you two. My name is Jeremy Chartier of 12 Mason Road. I've been a member of the department for better 17 years, Willington Hill. I'm here due to my general interest of these negotiations. I would like to take my 3 minutes of fame to just give you my personal opinion on the matters. I think a single department will work if it's full volunteer. I frankly do not believe a combination department within this town will, in the end, work well for the town of Willington. And I say that because of the observations I've made from the town of Mansfield and other surrounding towns. I just don't believe it's good for the longevity and the fiscal viability aspect. I do wholly support the theory of starting a ambulance corps, full paid ambulance corps. I believe that would be a bargain for the town, and especially if we can turn that into like a tri-town service where we share the burden with Ashford or, well, Ashford's got their own, I'm sorry, Union and other surrounding towns, or potentially merge with Stafford's ambulance corps or something along those lines. I believe that would be a good thing to explore, and I would support that. However, unfortunately, if the proceedings decide and ultimately the two stations do combine as a combined department, I, for one, will say I will depart as a member, seeing as I believe I was the third highest responder in our station. I think that should speak something, and I believe that sentiment will be shared by many of my fellow members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir?
Gerard Chartier, 12 Mason Road.
Any relation?
Yeah, we do assume.
Unfortunately.
Okay, yes, you do.
I don't readily admit to it, but
Okay.
I've been a volunteer firefighter for about 45 years of my life. A few years were with Crystal Lake, the rest were here in Willington Hill. My concerns are that I seem to sense a trend that the only option on the table here is consolidation. If we're talking about efficiency, I think there's far greater area to discuss, as well as what you people think is what's necessary is this consolidation. My concern is the conservation of the volunteer scenario that we have here at Willington Hill. We're 110% volunteer. Is my concern, and I would hate to see this result in the dismemberment, the disbanding of the volunteer operation, the volunteer community that we have here. I've put my whole life into this. I am, well, I don't know, am I still top responder for this season? I'm top responder in the department. A few years back, I was top responder in 13's department. So I am committed to this voluntarily. This is what I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, quick question. Can we address any of the comments?
I think that what we should do is hold off, and then at the end, I think I'm going to have board members respond in general, instead of in particular. Anybody else? Sir?
Yep, Dave Varley, Myrtle Road, Willington Hill member for 9 years. I'm also against the consolidation. In the long run, the career guys will run us out. You can already tell it on scenes, they don't want us there for the most part. It's got certain couple of members in specific, won't give names. I bought my house in close proximity to Willington Hill Fire Department because I wanted to be more involved, and I have been. Probably in the top 6 to 8 responders regularly, and if this goes in a direction against preserving the volunteers, I will also be departing and leaving town. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Nolan Pierce. I'm with Willington Hill Fire Department. I'm actually not a resident of Willington. But what I do believe is that Willington Hill Fire Department should remain separate under the guise that the Willington Hill Fire Department has fostered an environment that's unlike anything else, and if you were to combine the departments, you would take away that environment. Within this environment, and I can speak on myself, I've easily put in 60-hour work weeks on top of my full-time job at no cost to the townspeople. I've advocated, set up, and administered a firehouse or an emergency incident reporting software that both departments use and the fire marshal uses. I've dropped everything to come in for tornado warnings, blizzards, thunderstorms, severe storms, etc. And for the past 30 years, I've gone to center school for Fire Prevention Week to speak to the students on the benefits of fire safety. But I'm talking about me. If we talked about everybody in our department and their actions like these, we could go on all night. Everybody has put in countless of hours at no cost to the town within the environment that the Willington Hill has fostered. So I think that, while Station 13 has some very admirable members and they do amazing work in the fire service, what we have is a separate environment, and that facilitates and encourages the growth of actions like these that can only benefit the town at little to nothing.
Anybody else? Go ahead. Back on.
Helen Sauter. I am also not a member of Willington, but I am with the Willington Hill Fire Department.
Resident.
resident. Same difference. I would be with Willington Hill for next month. It'll be a year, and my main concern is my station's like a second family to me. I come to the station, they were very welcoming, and I also do feel the tension going to scenes with the other Station 13. I am gonna stand with Jeremy Chartier and Dave, and if 49 goes, I will also be departing from the fire station.
Thank you. And
Tammy Leach, former firefighter. I'm currently involved in the auxiliary. And I have to say that some of these speeches will be hard to follow because I agree. I think if the two departments are consolidated, you will lose your volunteer base.
thank you. Akram?
Nancy Brevant, Willington Hill Road. I'm speaking for generations. My father was not a charter member, but he was one of the early members of Willington Hill. Traditions that this department have started years ago are still being offered to this community at no charge, Easter egg hunt, etc. Many functions they do, fundraisers. My husband was also a member of 13 for 23 years. He was on the ambulance, and he's now over the road truck driving, so he no longer is active. A lot. Excuse me?
I talked to him at the town tag
Yes.
sale.
A lot of.
I'm just trying to put people
Yeah, the
together in my
tradition,
head, sorry.
yeah. A lot of the tradition that South Willington used to have is gone by the wayside. It's like the commercial and the volunteer. And I don't want to see the volunteer go by the wayside.
Thank you. Dan?
My name's
I'm
Dan
guessing
Leach.
because your name is on it.
Dan Leach, I live on 152 Old Farms Road. I'm also president of the Eastern Connecticut Sportsman's Club in Ashford. Now, we are a very small club, and we do all our work with volunteers. We're very different from most of the other clubs. We have a much higher participation rate in our club. We have meetings that generally 60% of the people show up, and it's all because it's volunteer and not paid. We do everything at our club through volunteer work, and it just seems to work. We've got this great atmosphere, and people want to participate. I'm afraid that if we go to some sort of consolidation, you're going to lose that. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Would you like to respond down at this end of the table? Do you have anything down, Alex? Kyle?
No.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments. We got those on tape, right? Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. However, they haven't been filed because I didn't forward the email. It's my error. So we can't do that until those are filed, so I will do that in the morning. Actually, I did it about 15 minutes ago. Until they show up on the website.
Like a motion to table?
I would like a motion.
I move we table the approval of the minutes.
Second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes will be tabled. All right, last time we started on our SWOT analysis. And because it's a fire thing, it's SWOT instead of SWAT. And that's not the reason. Sorry.
But thank you.
We're talking about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, both the internal and external to the fire department, of some of the efficiencies we've been looking at. And if you'll forgive me for just a moment, I'd like to tell you what I got out of the last meeting. And if I'm wrong, and I heard wrong, by all means, please correct me. First, we heard from Robin Knight, and I think that he did an exceptional job of telling us why firefighters are firefighters. There's a rise in firefighters that, frankly, I don't understand. But they have a need to go out and help people all day and all night. So what we want to do is we want to encourage that as much as possible. What I heard from, mostly from Tyler and some of that side of the room, was that the way of the world is we're heading towards consolidation and trying to get as many fire departments functions under one structure for the efficiency of the town, and that's the way things are generally moving, and we can end up there through tragedy, or we can end up there through careful planning, and that careful planning would probably be best.
Excuse me, Peter, can
Yes.
you explain that? Because I wasn't here during that meeting, but I don't understand the premise behind that.
Most most towns need to do, fire departments, as I understand it, my history may be weak here, fire departments started out as private corporations.
Right.
And they'd sell fire protection to people, and you get a plaque and they pound it up on your wall, and if you weren't paying that fire department, they wouldn't put out your fire. And they became seriously,
Okay,
they
but
drive up to your, and
that was back then.
right,
This
and
is
we've
now.
moved on, and so now we've formed fire associations, and that's where it evolved to, so that everybody put out your fire. They put out your fire, and the
Okay.
towns would start to pick up the cost of that. However, as we watch the towns around us, it becomes less efficient for the town to be paying separate departments. Not that it's wrong, but it's not as
So you have
easy.
paid and you have
Right.
volunteer. What are your volunteer base in the paid fire department? How many volunteers versus?
Right, well, that's,
Okay.
I know, I understand
All right,
that.
so I'm just
So,
trying
but even in the town of Mansfield, where they had relatively few paid people and a lot of volunteers, they started going towards a consolidation. I believe Bolton did as well, not Coventry, Tolland, number of the towns around here, and it from a town control position, it makes more sense.
Can I
However,
comment?
yeah, sure.
The biggest thing in it, it's not localized to Willington. It's statewide, countrywide. The volunteers are dwindling, no matter how we look at it. Everybody around us has seen it. Everybody keeps mentioning Mansfield. What people don't see is Mansfield still does have volunteers that still back them up with their paid staff. They work pretty well together. But it's a
Do they
national
have
problem.
volunteers from other towns that come in when you say
Yeah.
they have volunteers, or
They have a
what
big
is
program
their?
through UConn that brings in volunteers into the fire.
So they're getting funding from
No.
UConn?
They're not getting funding from UConn, they're just
Nothing?
getting students that, no,
Do they pay their volunteers for help?
on that I don't know.
But just to clarify, they only have 2 internal firefighters that are volunteers.
Anyways,
They're token.
that, and I think that some of what 13, these numbers backwards, 13 was saying is that in general, nationwide, the number of volunteers has been falling off. Then what I heard from 49 was that even though the nation is going one direction, 49 is going the other direction. They're bucking the trend. They're actually getting more volunteers. And I think what we want to do is make sure that even though the trend nationally is one way and the trend locally is bucking it, that we do the right thing, and that we keep our volunteers, and we make it so that the volunteers are happy and yes. And given that the town of Willington doesn't have a huge tax base, without our volunteers, I think we're toast.
Yeah.
Peter?
Yes.
Your mind?
No, by all means, go ahead.
what we've been hearing, guys and ladies, all these years from the town, and I was on the board of selectmen at one time, and so I saw this firsthand, is capital improvements, budgeting. We've talked about all this before. We've hashed this all out in a couple of previous meetings. So these are the issues from a town perspective, is you'd like to be able to plan for your whole town, one plan. This is, we're planning for the town of Willington, not two separate departments. What I'd like to, while everybody's still here, we've talked about lots of different forms of consolidation. Now, I'm getting the sense that everybody's got this preconceived notion of total consolidation. I'm wondering, and I brought this up before you guys, if we could accomplish the same things, address the town issues, the budgeting, the capital improvements, planning, these things, but also perhaps continue with somewhat separate departments or separate companies.
But how can you do that?
Well, there's a couple of ways, Tammy. First of all, you have, and I'll shut up after a minute. The fire commission idea was brought up a few years back and failed at a referendum. That kind of had a separate board that fielded took care of all these things, but you still had two separate departments that had to answer to a fire commission. That's one way. And another way I see is somewhat like Vernon did, where you consolidate the management, you consolidate the top, and Vernon, I believe, still has separate companies, and they have company meetings. They keep their autonomy. They keep their what Jerry's talking about, what Jeremy, and a lot of the folks are talking about, is they keep that Willington Hill or Willington One thing as a company, but there's perhaps one chief or one top person, maybe two deputies. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could do this.
But I don't understand how you could do that, because if obviously your paid members would be your top people.
No,
right?
see, I think that may be our issue, is that
Well, okay,
we're not going.
Are you going to lay them off because
No, Tammy,
Tom,
just give
the
me a
head?
second. Just give me a second.
Can I finish?
Sure.
So, in the scenario I was talking about, the second scenario, is you continue, at least for the short term, operate, or the long term, separately.
Flapper in the face.
Hi. You pay for that later. What I'm saying, what I'm getting at is, gee, couldn't we solve this problem by being creative and talking about it and addressing everybody's concerns and moving forward with something different than we have now, but also answering all these questions. And I think we can. I think we can answer these questions from a town perspective, from all of our perspectives as far as volunteer, because I also see, let me say I'd be perfectly happy as a member of Willington Hill, like you guys, to be comfortable and just finish my time as a Willington Hill member. I'd be perfectly happy as a member of Willington Hill to do that and to continue to serve. But I also see the other.
There's no end of time. If you're in
well, when I die.
Willington Hill is for life. 20 years.
I mean, end of, you know.
Okay.
But I also see there's bigger issues that we could address that we've been fighting for years. We've been doing this for years, talking about this whole business. Anyway, all right, so that's where I'm at. I'm just wondering if you guys, would you consider something different? Would you consider changing how we're doing things at the top levels, or as I outlined, but continue with
I think that what we need to do is we need to find that creative way of not ending up where you think we need to end up, where the paid people aren't at the top.
No, but
Can I address real quick?
Go ahead.
I think there's a big misconception that, those that don't know me, my name's Alex. I'm the fire chief of Willington One. I am not a paid fire chief. I am sitting here like everybody else volunteering to be on this board. Every meeting that I come to at the town, I'm a volunteer fire chief. I think that's a big misconception.
how many members are there in Willington One? Or Station 13?
Yes.
We have to remember, while this conversation is good, that there's an agenda with items that the board has to take up, and that while we are meeting in public, it's not a public meeting. So if we continue in this direction, you may not be able to get to your agenda. It's healthy conversation, there are things to bring up, and then the committee should address them.
Right, but I think what we want to do is right here, before we get back to our slot, is to make sure that we don't build up a groundswell of opposition
But I think
and
while you're
hostility.
doing your discussion, that started, you had started a good, healthy discussion last week, you'd be able to continue that.
Right.
The flow stops when you stop.
Right.
Everybody has lots of questions, and maybe, might I suggest at the end of the agenda, if you want to add it tonight or going forward, add a present to speak, so that we can speak to what came up as you were discussing, and that they could share their input.
Okay, why don't you, you're good? You have something quick to add?
No, I mean, the last meeting that we had, this was a big concern of most of Tyler.
This was a huge concern.
Of the board. They wanted to know everybody's input and why, and what their concerns are and what direction we should head. And so here they are. Here's everybody here to answer questions, so I think we need to make an exception. Like you said, either add it to the bottom of the agenda or continue on as we are, because this was a huge topic of conversation.
Right.
And we got to get over this hurdle before we go further.
And for the third part of what I was going to say is, after Tyler spoke and after you spoke, Tom, the thing I was thinking of is we're all viewing problems and no one's coming up with solutions. And I'd like to start to see some creative thought on solutions, so that we don't destroy our volunteer base, and that we do meet the needs of the town. We want to do both those things at the same time.
Could I have 30 seconds? Because
30 seconds, tops.
Okay. Historically, the departments are working together a great deal more than they did, say, in 1970 when I joined Willington Hill.
Right.
I moved to Penny Hill Road, and so I get to drive the truck all the time, and went on 3,000 ambulance calls. In those days, we had the ambulance. Once in a while, there'd be an accident where we both show up, and we both showed up at the call, but there was no sharing of equipment. We use Station 13's compressors for our Scott Air packs. We share a lot of stuff. We go to all the same calls.
Right.
I go to calls. I go to calls with well, a fair number considering I'm 75, but I won't be going to calls in 10 years. Don't worry. I will stop. I will stop. But basically things have improved.
Yes.
There is cooperation. There can be cooperation, and this has happened even though the two departments still don't like each other that much. Although I respect all the guys here a lot. Right. I like all of them, but so that's what I think, that historically things have actually improved a lot. They can improve more.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. We can improve it more. And I think that the thing that brought this to a head was when the two departments in the fire marshal's office all chose different software. And I think that's what brought it to my mind. And that's why I'd like to see some improvements. Okay, Tyler.
I think at this point, I think I may agree with Tom that I think you have people who took the time to come here and sit down and have some say and make some comments. I think my opinion is we should vary from the agenda and listen to the folks that came. I think just of the 3 or 4 folks that have talked, I've generated some questions in my mind to ask of the folks as they make their comments. I mean, I'd like to think that that's acceptable, but I don't have a problem with putting out the SWOT analysis. You have a lot of people here that came, they put the time in to come and be heard. But I think maybe a little bit more of a two-way conversation between the committee and the folks in the audience would a respectful exchange would be more appropriate. Tom?
Yep, I agree. I agree.
And I don't know what the rest of the committee feels like.
I'm good.
That's fair.
All right. So, now that you brought the whole thing to a screeching halt, thank you.
You guys agree?
I do.
Yeah.
All right.
So, let's start with the SWOT analysis, and if somebody's got something to say, if you could just let me know, and we'll
Can we
try
go back to the question?
Oh,
back
sure,
and
go
forth?
ahead. The
Before we
question
go
back and forth.
Thank you.
You have something else?
No, but
I'm sure that Tyler.
So I have one question that's just bothering me, and please nobody take offense to this. Volunteering for, whether it says Willington Hill, Willington 1, or the town of Willington, why did you get into it? I understand there's a lot of history and a lot of family ties to each department. Both department has that. I volunteered in the fire service because I wanted to help the town of Willington. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to say Willington 1 on my shirt or Willington Hill on my shirt. That's not why I'm here. Anybody else? Dave?
Because then you get some paid guys that think they're on top of the world and better than the volunteers, and they don't want you there. And it's very evident. Ask any of our members. Not interested in working alongside them 24/7. I do when I have to. Not interested in being a part of that altogether in one.
I don't think that, your question is not relevant, but it's after that. Why they joined is not relevant. What goes on and why they continue to join and what will keep these guys as members is the concern, and that's the questions we need to.
Why is there a general consensus, or I don't know if the words everybody else know, general consensus that there's a merger of any type that the town of Willington will be overrun with paid staff? There's only two folks down there. There's only 2 people down there. It's not a paid fire
If you
department.
lose the volunteers, you're going to have to hire more people,
Why?
right?
I agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand.
So our budget
why
say our budget gets cut, you're
why
going
would you
to
lose-
spend our budget on career staff.
Help me understand why, if there's a merger, what would make you cease doing what you're doing, helping the town?
I don't want to work alongside people that don't want me there.
But you're doing that now, you just said.
When I have to, I don't want to have to be going to hang out at a department with people that don't want me there.
Okay, so your concern is that you have a personal issue with the paid staff?
A few select, yes, not all.
A few select of the paid staff?
Correct.
And that would cause you to not volunteer anymore?
Yes, that's enough of a reason. Also, you
you
got paid staff sitting at the department, I'm never going to make a rig. No point in me being. So you might say go direct. Great.
I agree.
But that's more wear and tear on my vehicle, more gas. I'm not going to see any of that back,
But in the end, isn't it about the most efficient delivery of service to the townspeople?
Well, tell me what's broken right now. What's broken? Why are you trying to fix something that isn't broken?
I think
You're saying the nation's moving in a direction. Why do we have to jump on the bandwagon if it's not broken?
Well, and I don't remember who saw the minutes. The statement that I made at the last meeting was basically we know what we have now. We know the conditions in which we operate in. We know the financial constraints we operate in. We know the amount of money that the townspeople are dedicating to the 2 organizations. We know the response patterns. We know the availability. We know when fire trucks go and when they don't go. We know when people are around when they're not around. We know that there's training issues. We know that there's issues on the scene when you have to work together. I mean, we can sit here and play kumbaya and say everything's great. We work awesome and calls together. We don't. I was a fire chief for 20 years. We don't. My personal challenge in coming to this was, can we do better? Can we provide a more efficient service to the townspeople? So that's really what it comes down to. Now that can encompass 500 different things, but can we do better?
So combining.
If the general consensus of the electorate or you guys or us or whoever is that, you know what, leave it alone. If that's the overwhelming response, so be it.
So, Tyler, can I?
But taking an objective view from time to time, whether you're a corporation, whether you're a small fire company, whether you're a fishing game, no matter what it is, taking a step back and thoroughly evaluating the operation and how you're performing the function, are you meeting the core purpose of what you're being paid to do? is an awesome exercise. And there's no downside to doing it.
Does not hurt to evaluate, I agree.
Right.
You can evaluate.
So I want to comment on this particular issue. So this is a perfect thing that when we're back in the SWOT analysis, this is the perfect kind of thing that we should be working on, because we have, whether it's perceived or real threat, we have a threat to the cohesiveness that's felt by some of the members. So we need to see where is the opportunity in that. Is the opportunity, are there solutions? If we're looking at trying to do what's the best thing, then are there solutions to it? And if we spend a little time talking about what that threat is, why people feel that way, what we've observed, even let's say, I mean, it was brought up conflicts with some of the paid staff. So maybe there needs to be a discussion about how personnel issues are resolved. And maybe you guys have a great system already, whatever it is, no accusations here, I'm just saying, maybe that conversation leads to something that satisfies some of that concern. Maybe it doesn't. But I think we have to take these significant issues, even if we think, even if some of us have a conflict on whether we believe in that. Like for me, my statement would be whether it's 1 or 2 departments, as long as there's a volunteer ability, I'm still going. That's my personal feeling. Okay, that's not to knock any of the people who said they're out. I'm not judging them or anything. It's just that's how it hits my heart. And so then that's my particular reaction. So we have to look at what these reactions are and realize, you know, these humans are going to do what they're going to do, so how do we make it better, or how do we make it reasonable? Or if we've done a logical job of looking at this and taken each of these issues and brought up reasons why or why not, then we should really, I think, eventually get to a point where we're not 13s and a 49 sitting in the middle of the 13s and 49s, and we should end up being a bunch of peers working at this table.
For the same cause.
Right, for a solution, right. I think we're already here for the same cause.
Yeah,
I think we need to be peers working on a solution to this challenge.
Secondary, like Dave touched on an important thing that I hear a lot of, Tyler, is that if somebody's paid and they're sitting there and they're going to take a fire truck and we're all one organization, why would he get up and do it? He's not even going to bother. And that's going to grow and grow and grow until you have nobody.
Well, and I said it before in the meeting, Tom, 2 people do not make a fire department.
No, they don't. But
2 people
the
don't make a fire
2 people can
department.
destroy a fire department.
2 people don't make a fire
2
department.
people can destroy it.
Well,
I
an
agree.
entire organization can destroy it if you don't go to calls. I mean, it
Absolutely,
doesn't
but
matter, you
like I
still need
said,
to go.
you would look at the efficiency, you said efficiency at the end of that. The efficiency would be the end result for the town and the cost that you could incur on these citizens.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'm not a fire, in either fire department, I'm not a member, I really don't get much from it.
Neither am I.
But I'm a taxpayer in this town. And I do have a question. Why did 2 paid members come about in the first place? Why did the town think that they needed to have a couple of paid firefighters?
It started, who's older than
Early
Sam?
70s.
I mean, why do we, so volunteers working well up on one, why wouldn't it work well down
The
there?
answer is in 1968.
Ambulance.
The Willington one had the ambulance in the south end, the one firehouse.
An ambulance.
Yeah,
So basically, these 2 people were to service the ambulance?
primarily, they were employed to staff the ambulance. But when there was a fire, they took a fire truck. So that started in 1968 due to lack of people, not lack of volunteers. And this is an interesting point, guys. There were many people that go to calls. There's many people that at times go to calls now. There was a lack of the amount of people that were qualified to operate the ambulance. That's really what we're talking about. That's really the Achilles heel of any town in running an ambulance, is that having people that want to be EMTs, want to ride ambulance, want to dedicate an hour and a half and 2 in the morning to go to a hospital in Hartford. They don't want to do it.
Well, why not just have a ambulance corps with 2 people paid and just
Dan,
hire volunteer firefighters?
and you can absolutely do that. However, I wasn't born in 1968, but the position back then, don't rub it in, was that why would you just have them dedicated just to an ambulance when the taxpayers are already paying for them? Why not have them bring a fire truck to the fire as well? Or why are you just limiting it to an ambulance service?
So you're gonna drive 1 fire truck and 1 ambulance?
If there's a fire, you've got 2 fire trucks.
Oh, so you're gonna leave the ambulance
That's
at
correct.
home and just
correct.
bring the...
That's what we do now.
So
Yeah.
what if you need medical supplies in that ambulance?
You carry medical supplies in the fire trucks.
But we
call
also
the
have,
ambulance from the next time.
Yeah.
we have it,
Backboard instructors in the
Which,
fire
which,
truck?
which
But we don't
confused me because
we
Ah,
from my point of view, being in a number of these scenes, I'd rather have an ambulance and a fire truck, because if you have 2 people and 2 fire trucks, and it takes more than 1 person to run a fire truck, I don't know, it only takes 1 cop to run a cruiser, but that's because we're special. It takes a crap load of firemen to run a fire truck.
In any event, that's
I would like, personally, from my standpoint, to see the 1 fire truck and maybe an ambulance show up. And I understood when I talked last time,
you still can't
leaving the
transfer
fire
somebody.
truck, you know.
You still can't transport anybody.
But an ambulance is showing up. Doesn't say what,
Right.
there is a fire, there is an ambulance showing up.
Absolutely.
And 95% of the time, because of who's coming, they're there right after the first truck.
And that's common throughout the mutual aid
That's
system.
me. And that's why I need this understanding, is I don't.
And by the way, we get a little further in this process, that's the perfect kind of stuff for a working
Right.
session to say, are we doing the right thing for the taxpayers of Willington by splitting the crew? What is the right thing? We may determine we're doing exactly the right thing, but that's the perfect thing we can do in sort of a working session of what is the best way to get the resources, and maybe we determine it's 1 fire truck and 1 driver on the fire truck, 1 in an ambulance, 2 in the ambulance, 2 on the fire truck,
But I think
whatever.
you're putting the cart before the
Yeah,
horse,
that's-
because
I think that's
the
later.
initial problem or the concern among the crowd is, if there's somebody paid to take that fire truck, he's not gonna take it. He's not gonna bother. So you can still have 1 and 1, that's fine organizationally, operationally, you can have a guy paid to jump in each piece of apparatus. But it's still gonna deter these people from coming.
You're gonna have bays sitting with your trucks.
Well, what if you don't go?
sirens to
Well,
go
but
down,
we're gonna-
calling for
What if you don't go to the fire?
Just to answer what
What
Dave
if you
said
don't show up?
before,
At all?
I think we're here, Dave, and everybody, because it is, it's not a perfect system. I mentioned before
That is when you don't need these people. That's my opinion, I'm sorry. I was asked a question.
the funding, the capital, all of the planning, all from a town perspective especially, the training, there's issues that need to be addressed. It's not perfect. And there's things that we've been dealing with for years, and the town has come back to us for years to try, and even amongst ourselves, we can do it better. I think we can do it better. So it's not just the town. So it's not, the reason we're all here is because it's not perfect, and there are things to fix. I get it from both sides, but I think we can do some stuff. But, so, you know, there would be no sense to be here if there wasn't things that we could improve on.
Yes, Tim?
So, I don't quite understand what the benefit of consolidating the 2 departments. Nothing against Station 13.
Can I just say something real quick? I just want to point out that this is the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee, not the Emergency Services Consolidation Committee. While we are working towards consolidation or considering consolidation as a serious topic, that is not the sole purpose of us being here.
Wait,
Okay.
It's not the only option.
The reason you're at the table is because the 2 chiefs of the 2 departments came together asking to sit down and have talks about consolidation / merger.
Well, let me correct you
That
a little bit
was
on
the
that.
crux of why we're here. I mean, it was led by the departments in this case, not the town. I know that's been opposite. The 2 chiefs
I'd like
have
to
written
correct you a
letters.
little bit. It's brought to us by the selectmen year after year after year. So we form these committees each time the selectmen and the Board of Finance come to us and say, well, if it was 1 department, you wouldn't need 2 trucks. Because if we asked for 2 trucks in the same years, that's why we got together. That's why we agreed that, okay, and I agree, 1 department in this town would be more efficient. But it wouldn't, it's been proven that it's not gonna save any money. It's not gonna save any money in the long run. And so, it's, like I said, it's forced on us by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, whoever they may be, not you. But whenever we come in with any requests for purchase, we come in requesting 2 trucks. You're still gonna need the 2 trucks. But we come in separately, so the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen say, okay, well, if it was 1 department, you wouldn't come to this with 2 trucks, you know?
But correct me if I'm wrong, in this instance in March, the conversation began
Yes,
with the 2 of you.
because of that. And we agreed to say, okay, let's talk, because the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance are saying this again. That, you know, if it was 1 department, we wouldn't need 2 trucks. We really would need the apparatus we have, we'd need the stations we have, we'd need the personnel we have. So we agreed to sit and say, let's form this committee and discuss it.
And I'm here as a member of the Board of Finance. Board of something. I'm losing myself here. I was appointed to this committee because I'm a member of the Board of Finance, and essentially we were looking for those efficiencies. And the efficiencies that I was looking for is if we have the capabilities on a truck at one and the capabilities, the same capabilities on a truck at the Hill, the town doesn't gain. But if you have the capabilities on this truck and the capabilities on this truck that complement each other instead of duplicate each other, then the town wins.
But it's
and
true.
I want a town win.
And it's been said that, you know, I'm sure Alex will agree with this, that we take into consideration what they have for apparatus and the equipment they have, as to not duplicate everything they have or things that are not necessary to avoid what you're saying. And we do that every year. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's what we do. We look at Mutual Aid, we look at Mansfield, we look at Townsend, what they have for apparatus. We don't request a ladder truck because they have one. So and we would never get the money.
There's also things like the breathing bottles, those freaking bottles. Yeah, whatever. I think you should real men wrap a rag around your face. But we have to see those things come in chunks instead of to us it looks like two programs running, you know, concurrently instead of one program running.
And that's the problem, but not the equipment itself, or the finances, or the budgets. That's the problem. The presentation.
There's an administrative
presentation.
We're not doing a good job on our own. That's why we're here. The two departments now are not doing a good enough job to coordinate our efforts with funding, with training, with everything else. That's why we're here.
That is true.
Don't try to paint it as something else. We're not doing a good enough job in these areas. That's why the town comes after us all the time. Let's acknowledge that, move on, and fix it. Or I'm not going to sit here anymore. Let's just go, Chief. Let's leave and not participate, because I don't need to waste my time.
I want to do what's best for the town, I've said that.
On baloney. If we're going to fix some stuff, move forward, let's do it. If there's no chance of that, let me know.
I know I'm going into the fire right now with this, but here's what I'm seeing. Over the 23 years I've been here, I'm Stephanie Summers, I'm on Y Road. My husband's a volunteer. I'm a neighbor of the firehouse, gladly. And I've observed a lot in this time. And I think I think there's sort of a flaw to the idea that consolidation is the be-all and end-all first off. So I'm wondering about the premise. And that's because while I think the word is not, I think I would lose the M word and maybe the C word and go with the word collaborate, because I think a collaboration in the way trucks are purchased and the way training happens and the way you work in the field is something that I think people could willingly work toward. But I think when you get into this, you asked the question earlier about what's the dynamic of Willington Hill, what's different. And what I've observed and why they're so powerful, getting a solid volunteer crew year after year after year in all these decades, is that they have a pride of ownership, they elect their own leadership, they have a buy-in, they are there, it's a big, they show up, and they have, and they all see to that their training happens. They're all very, I know my husband's always been like that. It's very, you know, they're careful about it, they love it, and it is, and people talk about it as family, and I understand why they feel that way.
Because most of them are related.
Well, I think that's part of it, but it's beyond that. It really is. It's a community, and I think the whole thing is, you know, when you start immediately talking about consolidation and merger, I don't think the people at Willington Hill are there necessarily because they want to report to the selectmen, or they want to have one chief to save Tom's very rich salary. And they want to have some part in the service to the town. A very, you know, they want to be right there on the ground. And I think that they feel that this, you know, and I'm sorry if I'm talking for people and not saying what you think, but please correct me. But I think they feel this, this building, they're building something, and they, all the time. And I don't think it's the same as sort of like, okay, we'll just report to the other chief and the selectmen will decide who our chief is, or, you know, whatever happens. It's just, I really think that, and I've often called it, you know, killing the goose that laid the golden egg, because for the town, it really is like an incredible value.
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt, Stephanie, that volunteer firefighters in this town provide us an invaluable service for way less than we could possibly.
And I know no one
them.
wants to undo that.
And nobody wants to undo that.
I understand that. I'm just saying the dynamic, because I think what it is like hierarchy is important at a fire scene. Someone's got to be in charge. But hierarchy as far as I'm going to lose myself into one big hierarchy that I really didn't help build. Right. That's a different animal, and I think that's what's in the heart there.
I think that's the reason we have this committee, is so that we come up with some very creative answers, which are not going to be easy. We've given ourselves a 14-month time frame to work this out in. We're not going to work it out tonight, all right? But we have to find those efficiencies that Tom's talking about.
Finding the efficiencies is a good goal. I'm not arguing that.
And
I'm trying to explain what I see from years of observing.
Loss of volunteers.
Right, and I think that was very important what you brought up last week, is that we want to make sure that we don't destroy that, because you are fighting. You're going against the trend, the bad trend in a good way. So I appreciate that.
Well, speaking of that trend, could I just ask, the last study, have you guys, as part of your committee, revisited the results of the last study?
The last 3 studies.
Is that available for the public to look at?
If you go to all the fire chiefs
is
have
it online?
it.
But maybe we'll put it online, because they're all quite lengthy to
print
copies, but what we do is see what we can work out where we can put it. I think there's an emergency services page, but we'll get it online. And then maybe share it in a public notice so that people know where it's at.
Thank you.
Okay. Now.
But at any time they're in the selectman's office.
Breathe for a second. Okay. Getting back to our SWOT matrix, one of the things I asked at the last meeting was for everybody to come up with a couple of things, so that we weren't hearing from the same voices. So I'm going to start from Stuart, because Stuart was the person that I haven't heard from tonight.
For good purpose. Actually, could you read off what you have up on the list here now?
Under strengths, we have the town has funded and equipped the departments both pretty well. We have strong leadership in both departments. The town has an expectation of the level of service that I believe is being met. Both departments have the support of the town, as we've seen here tonight, and that the call response is fairly unified. Our weakness is that we've got 2 departments leveraging against each other for budget concerns. We have the command unification as far as administrative is not there. The interdepartmental understanding of other members, the other departments' training levels.
Actually, could I throw my point on that one?
Yeah.
And this kind of gets back to one of Tammy's things about why are we doing this. We collectively show up at a call together. We don't know each other because of the us versus them, the Hatfields and employees, whatever you want to call it, that when their members show up and we Willington 1 don't know them, we can't assign a task to them because we don't know if they know that task. If Willington Hill looks at Joe, do they know Joe? Do they know what he can do from our department? Absolutely not.
And so he'll feel left out as well, where he's skilled in a lot of stuff and some things he's not, and that applies to everybody in the room.
But
Could we-
you
could-
say, are you skilled in this?
Depends on what the call is.
During the call,
But-
do you know CPR? Do you know how to put it in the airway? That's not the time to be doing that. That's why you train ahead of time. But, and could that be solved by training together? It would be greatly improved. However, we don't do that. And that's a collective we in the room.
Now, I'd like to speak on that, just because this is a problem of mine as a training officer for Willington Hill. I've organized joint training together, and Trevor and me have sat down and worked out hours to do that. And when it came around to doing that, and we worked and we brought in state assets like Lifestar that's dropping lots of money just to come see us, the paid personnel sat in their vehicles. Now, I know that's just one example, but it did happen.
But nobody brought that to my attention.
I'm sorry.
See, and that's
honestly,
that's
the
the
first time I'm
training.
hearing of that. I didn't know that.
That's his
I
training
can't address
issue
that
here.
if I don't know.
We've also come to you with other issues regarding people's comments on our incident reporting software. We have addressed that with you.
We have.
And it
that-
hasn't changed. They
Okay.
still appear.
Okay.
I know these are just a few examples, but I guess those are things that you say from your side you don't know us, and that's fair. There's a lot of people to a little people. The times that we're going to cross paths are very few. It's understandable. More joint training would be a completely great way to make this happen, but that's hard to do when both parties aren't doing it. And now I can agree. We're not to not blame ourselves. We could have more involvement on our side as well. But I just want to say that both parties are at fault here.
Oh, absolutely, I agree.
Okay.
But operationally, that is a
You were
negative
referring,
on scene.
you were referring to not knowing each other to be able to pull off our operations. But if you can't act together in a training simulation, then how are we supposed to do it in an operational
That's a
setting?
good question.
But I just wanted to put that out there.
But that also makes me think of recently my brother, Robin Knight, as you know, lost his house. How many departments showed up to his call? It wasn't just Willington Hill and Willington 1. It was mutual aid, and there were tons of people. Did you know everyone there?
A good chunk of them, yes.
Okay. But did you know everyone? Did you know everyone's training? I mean, you're not going to know everyone. That's up to the department chief to keep an eye over his people and where they are. And his training officers.
But that's one issue Tom and I both have. If I show up on a call and Tom's not there, or there's not an officer there, and I have, I'll use John and sitting in the back row, I don't know, other than John being there, what his capabilities are.
Okay,
Kind of
maybe.
in a bigger call like that, you kind of go, because it's so big, you go to an officer,
Right.
like you say, hey, can you get a crew to do this? And it kind of is up to that department's officer to assign his own people. So it's a little bit different when you're a smaller scale call like we're talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's as simple as having a card, a member with an ID, what their training level is.
So do we have this on here as a weakness right now? Don't know each other's training levels?
Yes.
I can't,
Yes.
yeah, okay, that's what I thought, that's how we came to it. Because I'm not gonna
Right here.
have that far anyway.
Number 4.
Oh, my glasses. That's why.
Here.
They're outside.
But sir, you say you know 5 departments were at Robin's house, and you said you know them all and most of their training, but you don't know guys in the same town. How is that possible?
You don't see, a lot of them, we don't see on many calls. I mean,
So I mean, if you know them, then there must be a way to fix it. I mean, if you know everybody from Stafford and everybody from Holland and everybody from, how do you do that and not know our guys? Let's do the same thing they're doing.
an example being, we had a call across the street from my house. I was up taking care of the patient, I asked him, can you get the stretcher out? And carried the patient down the stairs, there's no stretcher. They didn't know how to get the stretcher out of the ambulance. And it was members from your department. So I'm glad they were there, and glad they were willing to help.
But again, my question
got
is, if
few
you know
numbers.
all these guys from all these other departments, and you're claiming you don't know our guys, well, how do we fix that? How do you know the guys from the other departments?
I think that's one of our
Yeah.
opportunities. is we need to fix that. And I think that's where we're going to start coming into some of these.
I hate to sound optimistic, Mr. Chairman, but this particular issue is a pretty easy fix.
Yeah.
This is a pretty easy fix. I mean, joint training on Tuesday nights used to be a thing.
Yeah.
When I was chief, and Tyler and I were chief somewhat overlapping years, and we had joint training between the two fire departments on Tuesday nights. And then that, were you what?
Was I living in town?
No. We won't talk, never mind.
That issue is fading
Anyway,
out over there.
This is something that has an easy solution, joint training. All it requires is to get the administration straightened out to do it. Like this is fixable.
Mm-hmm.
We have issues that are going to be harder to grapple with.
Oh, yeah. I believe you're correct. And we're going to, that's why I had you start first. Mike?
What?
Want to add something?
Well, yeah, so I thought in strengths we should be saying that our personnel are a strength. I'm not talking about paid versus volunteer or anything like that. I think we should be saying our personnel are a strength, because I know I hammered on this in an earlier meeting about resources and all that, but I think, we talked about being funded well, we talked about being equipped well. We have a ton of dedicated people. We wouldn't have this emotion, we wouldn't have this angst and this frustration and concern here tonight. We wouldn't have Tom's concern that he expressed if he wasn't someone who cared about the service. So that's a strength.
Yeah.
Now we have to figure out how to get that all working in the same direction.
Trevor?
I want to just keep in mind there's a weakness, interoperability. Being a member of Willington, being on, say, Old Farms for a call where I could more or less assist Willington Hill in making a crew for their truck and going across town to my station and hoping and making that truck, I see it as an issue. We should be able to open our doors to each other. A call goes out.
Do all trucks work the same? Like the pumps turn on?
Basically, yes.
I wouldn't expect tomorrow to show up.
I asked that not completely, because I know Ashford went to a fire and they sent one of their junior firefighters out and he couldn't figure out how to turn on the pump. So they had no water and that was bad.
The basics are the same on all the trucks, but there are unique features and controls and subtleties that you have to be trained on each piece.
I don't expect it to happen overnight. It'd be multiple training sessions, familiarization of the apparatus.
And like Tom said, that's come and gone also. There was for a time when I lived down in Willington, down in the village area, I had a card for that fire station even though I was an officer of Willington Hill. I think you had given me a card. One of you guys gave me a card to get in. Right, and I would pick up a truck on occasion from that station.
All right.
For the record, John Pritko, 16 Eldridge Road. And one of the weaknesses I like to add, if possible, is we don't know who's going to the calls. As from your department, you don't know which members are going to the calls. The reason why is because we're not using the same app. So if Stuart noticed that John is coming to High Chase for a call, and he looks at the name on the app and it says, okay, he's an EMR, and that's it, then he might have some indication that, okay, he's not an EMT, but he's an EMR. So your qualifications are on the app, and that's something I brought up before with our station. I say, station 49. But we're not using the same software when it's responding. It would be nice if we could all work together. And I know there's some other reasons why some of the officers point out to me why you guys aren't on board with us, or we're not on board with you, however you want to look at it. So, I mean, that's the easy way to find out, Alex, right? Who's coming to the call and what trucks we're taking, or service vehicles.
Well, I just for disclosure, I do see who's coming because I have your.
Okay.
Right.
And I wasn't aware of that.
You spy?
Yes.
Oh, we're collaborating.
It would also save some money. That Willington Hill pays a fee for their software and the one pricing plan, and we pay a different software vendor.
Thus an efficiency just presented itself. Tyler?
$49 a year.
You got me last week, man.
Okay, I did get you last week, I got you big time last
There's a
week.
lot of those.
Alex?
Can we go back to what's on the weaknesses? I can't see the mic.
Can you make that smaller, Peter?
I don't know if I can or not. Communication, definitely a weakness we can always hit, can always be better.
Bottom right, Peter.
Slider?
Yeah. Where do we want to go?
Just so we could, I didn't know if you could get all four quadrants up there at the same time.
Then you'll never see it.
I can't see it before.
I can see
Let's
blue
talk
and
about
white.
your iPad.
Oh, you got a bigger TV screen.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
okay, no worries.
All right, sorry about that. Well, it's small enough, I got both of them on there now,
You pinch it in?
one side. So, communications under weakness.
It is definitely better than where it was, but it can always be better.
Alex, you're referring to like administrative communication?
Administrative, yeah. Well,
Okay.
I'll use administrative and even unseen. I mean, if I show
Person to
somebody.
person. You're not talking about radios and stuff, you're talking about person to person?
Both.
Okay, all
Talking
right.
about operationally and.
Operationally
Okay, all right.
and administratively. Because if I show up on a scene in my in a personal vehicle or I'm, I need a radio off one of the trucks, I have no idea how to use it. If I'm grabbing one off ET 249, I have no idea because our stuff isn't programmed together. We go to every call
Your
together.
radios aren't programmed the same?
No.
We have.
Say,
Yeah, you gotta clarify that. You gotta clarify that.
Hold on. It's not same frequencies, but their labeling is different than what our labeling is.
There's other different
So
channels.
We all know which
Peter,
channel we're
Peter.
supposed to be on, and we all get on
It's
that
not
channel.
the difference between a brick and a stick, okay?
I can figure it out, but if I told Victoria to go grab a radio off of the ambulance, or off of the ET, she's not gonna have a clue.
Okay.
Huh?
J&S is only a phone call away. Go ahead.
So I'm just gonna touch on what a couple of people said for my turn here. The communications, the radios and the channeling and all that stuff, and the programming of the radios and the communications, and the software issue. We both have agreed in the past that it needs repair and needs to be put together, and we both agreed to that. It's just, we haven't done it. It's just we haven't done it because there's so many other things that are going on and we're getting by. So we already have addressed the things. We've talked about, okay, should we switch to their software? Should they switch to ours? We just haven't had a chance to test their software and them test ours, and
We're
except for Alex.
still talking 33 right here.
So, and then the
Not
communications,
really. Okay.
and then that's the communications operationally. Again, when the fire call goes out, we all get on the same channel so we can talk to each other.
Right.
It's just that we
Fire
like to
departments are
have,
much better than police departments in that.
that may be their channel 3 where it's our channel 1, the channel we're supposed to be on.
Beautiful.
And so we'd like to fix that, and we have talked about addressing that issue as well.
It's gonna change anyways.
Yeah, it's gonna change, and we just haven't,
It's gonna change.
again,
Is
got
the state changing something?
TN's right here.
Oh, so it's all TN's fault?
Absolutely.
Always has been.
True that.
That we can agree on.
Go ahead, Bobby. You got anything for me?
Is that the first seeing this bill here this week?
Yeah. Tom?
Paid personnel plus and minus.
All right.
It's a
It's a strength and it's a weakness.
It's a strength and a weakness, and it's like big.
Would it be weakness or threat? I mean, I don't want to say it that way.
There's a factual and perceived threat, there's two separate types of threats.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to, not,
It was a
no offense to
perceived,
paid
I think it
personnel
was
here.
discussed last week, it being a perceived threat.
People perceive it as a threat.
I don't know, you want to put it in 3 different spaces.
I'm putting it under strength and weakness.
It is a very weighty thing. That was yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't see it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say for, I don't know, probably a weakness, internal weakness, administration. Not saying that, we're all doing it wrong, and not to say that we're heading up the department wrong, it's just,
Get that. Everybody quiet. Oh, that's it, meeting adjourned.
We're gonna adjourn this thing shortly.
That was another couple of years.
Yeah, back to what I was saying is administration, because, you know, if, I mean, not to say each department's, you know, heading theirs up, you know, completely wrong. It's just that, you know, one thing that, you know, one department could see is a real issue and brought up to their administration as being a real issue. If it's brought up to another, you know, the opposing chief, it, you know, it may not be as big of a deal. You know, it just could be brushed off.
Yeah.
So I could see that being a big problem.
Peter, are we gonna go back around the table, or you want us to just chime in with what we got?
Go ahead and chime in with what you got.
I got another weakness, separate standard operating procedures.
Is this, I know with police departments, up until about 20 years ago, every police department came up with their own operating SOPs. And you had your book, and what you did was, I know what UConn did was they went down and Xeroxed Willimantics and then whited out every place that said Willimantic and wrote
Yes,
in
that was
UConn.
before cut and paste, I
That was
remember.
before cut and paste. And it was, there was times when we had to call Willimantic because nobody whited that part out and wrote in UConn. And then the national people came out and said, if you want to be, if you want to be accredited, you need a set of, what do they call them? Administrative and operating procedures, A&Os.
A&O manual.
Yeah, that met national standards. Yes. Do you have
Our world's different.
Yeah.
Our world's different.
That's, but is there a national accreditation or?
The fire
state
service is
accreditation?
200. The fire service is 200 years of history unimpeded by progress.
Yeah,
And
No, well, it's not completely.
There is an organization, National Fire
Right.
Prevention, NFPA, which is a guideline for a lot of
You
things.
know, like your incident command structure, somebody came up with that, and that's pretty standard because police department finally stole it because we had none. You just run around like an idiot and have the dispatcher tell you what to do. And suddenly now we have somebody coming on scene and saying I'm in command. And so there must be a.
The fire service is not in the same place that police is, where many police departments are going for accreditation. And there is leverage in money to get accreditation.
Right.
You have to have accreditation to get certain grants and all that. It's not the same, it's not to that level in the fire service. So there isn't the same drive and the same sort of disbursement of accreditation or standardization nationwide. It's
Can I
not.
speak if I'm wrong, Tyler? The last time this committee, I believe it was this committee, it could be one of the studies, there was discussion about pulling them together, the two SOPs together and working on them. I believe that was something they had identified last time.
That's in my opinion, that's really low-hanging fruit. That's something that can easily be done in probably 2 nights. The key to having SOPs is they really dictate your operational, the operational side of the department, how you're going to operate at fires, at medical calls, at accidents. You can have them on paper, that's awesome. But you have to train on them. You have to implement them. You have to follow them.
Isn't that where you were about 10 minutes ago? Just saying.
You have to do those. You actually have to,
You have to actually pick the low-hanging fruit.
Again, I think it's an issue that hasn't really been pushed or addressed. We've again talked and agreed about it, but it hasn't been pushed or addressed because an example would be if Willington, the whole town had one standard operating procedure, Tolland's going to have something different. So we can work with Tolland. They're coming in and doing the same job. We're doing the same job and we know what needs to be done procedurally. There are some little differences and things like that, but again, so same with other surrounding towns, they all have different SOPs than ours. So whether ours was 1 or 7.
But they don't work in this every single day.
Right, I understand that, but it's just an example that, it's one of the reasons why it hasn't been jumped on and made happen right away because we're not bumping into each other at calls. you know, because his procedures say run left and mine say run right.
I just know in one of those many documents that we discussed getting them together and looking at, so it was something that was addressed the last time.
And it particularly becomes important, especially when you talk about firefighter safety and fireground safety, specifically fireground communications or the 2 and 2 rule, things like that. You have to make sure you're on the same page. You're going to be potentially killing people.
Alex, are you done with your ads? Okay. So there was something the last 2 weeks I've been thinking about, and of course I didn't write it on my list, but it came to me after you passed my turn. So I think something that's a strength and a weakness, it's both sides, and I think it's what we keep bumping up against too in these conversations for the last 3 meetings is the cultural difference that's developed over the years between the 2 departments. It's a strength in where you're hearing people say, this is what works great in my place, and this is why I'm worried about change. So it's a strength in that way because it's working for that particular place. And for example, the culture in Willington 1, they're accustomed to working with paid people. So it fits their culture. Willington Hill clearly is a different culture. It works, there's a high volunteer base there. There's fear about that cultural change. That's part of the hardest thing for humans to deal with is cultural change.
I think you and I discussed this separately.
We also worked it together. Like when you weren't allowed to open the door between the 2 sides of the building at work. Right. So the cultural change, I think, is a strength, but that's also our weakness. Or maybe you can say the cultural change, the culture is the threat to this whole process. So I think we have to, even if we don't address it directly, I think that's the root of a lot of the concern.
It's more the results of the cultural change.
Right, right.
It's losing volunteers and costing the town money.
Right.
Or not.
Yeah, we have, I think we have that.
We have losing volunteers is correct.
Right. Okay, so maybe
You want me to
those
add
need
culture?
No, I mean, I think it's fine that it's in. It's fine that it's on strength and weakness, because it still comes into the conversation.
I think part of it, Mike, is that the culture of the Hill is so strong. Yeah, the fact that you guys had members come up with money to buy land is indicative of that level of commitment in the department. I'm not giving you that much money.
I'm not even saying it. Andy's got it as well.
Yeah.
You sometimes answer questions that I didn't ask.
I know.
Sorry.
Okay, what I'd like to do is get this list out to you guys, and I think we had a good exchange with an understanding from the town tonight. I think what we need to do is we need to take a short break, like 2 weeks, and think about some solutions. I think the solutions are going to be a lot harder than describing the problems.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
I emailed you this afternoon something that you can look at, and if you choose to share it with the committee, I spent a lot of time looking online at different Google searches about combination departments and challenges and all that. And there's I sent it late this afternoon because I figured it'd be a topic we discussed. There's a ton of material.
All right, I'll forward that email to the entire committee.
And it's all links, because there was no, I mean, some of these things are 200-300 pages long. I didn't see the sense in gathering all that up.
Listen,
but there are a lot of people who went to the National Fire Academy.
Erica sent me a one-page thing today, and I didn't read it.
Does that make you feel good? Actually, you sent it 2 weeks ago, he just saw it today.
I guess you got a short
He opened his email today.
That must be it.
Anyway, so, and it talks about all different parts of the issue, of volunteers, the shortage of volunteers, the cultural differences, combination departments.
Did you forward that email to everybody, Tyler, the one you sent me? I'll try to forward that one as well as the one on the nationwide shortage of volunteers.
I sent you.
It was a link, I believe.
I just sent you the one, the PowerPoint for Dr. Carter.
Yeah, I know. Who was it that sent me that then?
Well, I think as a matter of procedure, we should send things to you and have you distribute it. That way the distribution is even and you can, if you want to choose to CC, I don't know if that's something the secretary should be noting as communication.
Try to forward things as easily as possible.
No, I don't think it should go to you. I'm just saying, I don't know if you, as long as he's controlling the distribution, if he wants it in your notes, he can notify you.
I'll just send you everything as well.
600 pages.
My point of bringing that up, Peter, is that might help, seeing what other people did for solutions and looked at, it might help us come up with some ideas, recognize some issues and how to head them off.
Oh yeah, we have some issues. So, Bobby, I'm looking for you. Oh, good and welfare. Does anybody have anything good or welfare? Now I'm looking at you.
Make a motion for adjournment.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, folks, for coming out and sharing.
Thank you.
And not to screw this up too bad.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
All of these meetings are public meetings.
Wait, I want
They
that on the
are the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. And unless shown online on the agenda, they'll be in this.
Oh, I don't, thank you.
No, they all